I like to go by a phrase of what got us here won't get us there, which basically means you have to keep leveling up. You can't keep doing the same things and expecting better results. So if you want better results, you have to make some changes within your business. So I also suggest going to the Canton Fair. For those of you, has anyone been to the Canton Fair before? Show of hands, great. It is the biggest import-export fair in the world, where it's over a 3-week period, 2 times a year. They have literally every single product and every single supplier you can imagine at this event, and you get a chance to basically develop products at the show, meet a lot of suppliers, pick your product, pick your price, negotiate your terms, and you can do all of that under one roof, which should save you a lot of time in terms of email back and forth, and save you a lot of cost as well in terms of sample sending. Now, China Magic is a group that I'm a part of, which I do some mentoring in China. So anyone who is interested in going to China, we have a booth outside. Look for China Magic, and there's a special offer during this event as well. If you go to SellerCon.com/China, I think you get $500 off. So if you want any more information about that, you can check in the booth outside. So once you get to China, people who go for the first time, it can be quite intimidating. They don't really know where to start, or what questions to ask, or who they should approach. So I've sort of summarized the top 20 questions you should be asking to get the best results. And I would say that for anything in life, the quality of your questions determines the quality of your results. It's so important, I need to say it again. The quality of your questions determines the quality of your results. So whether you are going to China, or if you're just talking to your suppliers on email, these are the sort of questions you should be asking. So, are you a trading company or a factory? To be honest, there's not a right or wrong answer to this question. Trading companies can be good. There's a common misconception that, oh, if I go direct to the factory, then I'll make a little bit more savings. But trading companies can also be very good at what they do. They can offer you a service that maybe a factory can't. They can offer you more products. Some factories don't even have an export license, so they have to use a trading company. But it's just for your understanding, it's good to know who you're dealing with. And then I like to ask, where's your factory located? Are the office and the factory located together? Because quite often you make a plan to visit your factory, and they'll tell you, okay, cool, our office is in Shanghai. You go to Shanghai, but then you didn't know that the factory was 5 hours away. And then also, which port do you ship from? Because quite often you might want to put all your goods in a full container just to save on shipping costs, but had you known that 2 of your other factories were actually shipping from the same port, then you could have split your shipments. So just always make sure you're aware of which ports your factory ships from. Then how many workers do you have in your factory? Now, there's not a right or a wrong answer to this question. I've worked with some factories which have 50 employees, and I've worked with some factories which have got 2,000 employees. And depending on where you're at in your business or what you want to achieve, maybe factories which have 2,000 workers have got a lot more stricter regulations, so there's a lot more processes. Factories with 50 workers are a lot more flexible, will give you lower MOQs and things like that. So again, you want to be asking how many units can you produce per month, so you have an understanding that they can meet your scale. Then go over the price, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail shortly, and then the MOQ. Does everyone know what an MOQ is? The minimum order quantity. You always want to ask them to explain what is the MOQ and why is it that way, because quite often you'll give them a design of your product and it'll be a pattern of I don't know, some floral stuff or whatever, and they'll say, oh, the MOQ is 2,000 pieces, and you're like, oh, that's too much for me. But have you asked them, why is it 2,000 pieces? They'll be like, well, we have to go out to a fabric factory, we have to print this, we can only use it for you. But if you just take our stock red color, then we can try 300 pieces. So always just ask them to explain why they have an MOQ. And then, which markets and countries do you supply? You kind of just want to ask this because you want to know where are they focusing our attention. If they are supplying the Japanese and the Korean market, maybe they're focusing on higher quality. If they're manufacturing for the US market, then maybe they're making for your competitors and they're compliant with all your regulations in the US market. You might find an opportunity if they only supply Europe. You might find something that's working well in Europe that hasn't come to the States yet. Or maybe if they're supplying South American market, they might be focusing on the lower quality goods, which don't have any testing or anything like that. So you just want to paint the picture in your head. Then which brands do you supply? This is really just to know where's their attention going, what brands are they focusing on, and you can research those brands and just buy those products and then make sure you're comfortable with the quality that they're producing. Then who's your biggest customer? Because it's kind of like the 80-20 rule. Your supplier or manufacturer might make for a lot of different brands, but 80% of their production goes to one brand. So you just want to know who that is and what they're really capable of. Then have you supplied any big retailers or department stores? Now this is very, very important because if they supply your Walmarts, Targets, Bed Baths and Beyond, then they've basically engineered the price of the product down to the lowest possible price it can be, and they've also achieved massive economies of scale as well. So you just want to be aware of that, and they will have done all their testing and regulations and things like that. But once you build a close enough rapport up with your factory, what I often do is ask them, okay, tell me when you're placing an order for, tell me when you're making an order for Walmart or someone like that, and then I'm going to piggyback off their order and benefit from their economies of scale. So if they're doing a backpack, then I'm going to use the same materials. I'm going to use it for a different product, but I know the materials are going to be really cheap because you're ordering such large quantities. But you can't really, ask that from the offset. But once you've built a relationship up with them, you can get that type of information. Then do you supply any brands selling on Amazon? Again, it doesn't really matter if they do or don't, but you kind of want to have an understanding if their attention is on Amazon, if they're able to fulfill your orders, knowing how the consumer feels about your product and returns and reviews and all that sort of stuff. And then do you sell on Amazon yourself? There's quite a lot of factories which are selling on Amazon, and it's just good to know. I mean, I purchase from factories which are selling on Amazon. I don't mind because I've developed such a brand that can't be copied, but it's just good to know for your own reference. Then, has your factory completed any third-party audits? Now, this is super important because of any, does everyone know what an audit is? You can basically use companies like Intertek, BV, SGS, and they can go in and check the factory, make sure that there's adequate lighting, that everyone's getting paid above minimum wage, that there's no child labor, all that sort of stuff. So you're comfortable working with a factory knowing that it's been completely tested. And then whenever you work with a retailer, they will always ask you for the audits of the factory that you're working with. But if they've completed that already, it's just good for your reference. If they have completed any audits, you know they're a very good factory. Which products does your factory really specialize in, and what is your strongest item? Because quite often your factory or trading company will show you a wide array of products to capture your attention, to try and get an order from you. But you really want to know, okay, what do you really specialize in? What's your strongest item? Where can I benefit the most from your strengths? Then does your factory have in-house testing as well? So I often send my products for testing to these labs like Intertek and whatnot, but some of the factories actually have the testing in-house themselves. So if it's a backpack, they'll have a zipper tester where they test the zip 10,000 times before they actually produce it, or they're checking the buckles, or they're stretching the fabric until it tears. So all that sort of stuff, you just want to ask if they can do that in-house. I went to a factory for airbeds, and they have this rule that they have to inflate 100% of the airbeds before they actually box it to make sure there's no holes or anything like that. And it was an order for 30,000 airbads. It was a room maybe 3 or 4 times the size of this, a football field just filled with airbads. It was one big massive bouncy castle. So it was quite cool to see. What new products have you been working on? Because we ourselves, we're always constantly developing products, but guess what? So are the factories, because they want to stay ahead as well and they want to get more orders. So ask them what they've been working on. Have they got anything new? Can you basically take anything from them before it hits the market? Which products are new here for the Canton Fair? Because basically they will have new products, but they don't show it. They'll have it in the back because they don't want their competitors seeing it. They don't want people who are not buying from seeing it. But if you just ask them what's new here, and then if you do see something that's new, always ask them for exclusivity. If you think that that's something that you can sell, but you don't want any competition on it, maybe give them an order quantity. Say, for USA, give me exclusive for 3 months. Bless you. I'm going to build up a very big audience for this, and then quite often they can actually give it to you so you can have an advantage over your competitors. Then when would be the best time to visit your factory? Even if you don't actually plan on visiting the factory, just ask them when is the best time to visit, just because you're starting to build that relationship, because it's kind of like a respect thing that if you're willing to go and see them in their place of business, then it shows that you're very, very serious compared to someone just communicates by email or using a sourcing agent or something like that. So just ask them, and they can also inform you about their holidays as well, because Chinese New Year, the workers go away and then they come back, different workers come back, they have to retrain them. There's about a month period where it's very, very difficult. So just ask them these sort of questions so you can learn for yourself. And then can you email me a full specification sheet by the end of the fair of everything that we've discussed? So it doesn't matter if it's a Canton Fair or on Alibaba, you want to be asking for a full spec sheet, because bear in mind that these suppliers get a lot of emails every single day from different customers all around the world. Some are serious, some are not. Even in the fairs, they'll get approached by maybe 100 different customers every single day. So they may not remember you, but basically you want to make sure that whatever prices and products that you discussed and agreed, that you have a note of it and they also have a note of it, and then you get them to email you as well, so you're both in agreement of what was discussed. then ask for photos of the factory or a company presentation. You know, if you are sourcing online, if you are using Alibaba, maybe you don't have the opportunity to go to China, quite often they prepare a company presentation which tells you how many workers they have, the customers that they have, and the markets they place attention on. So always ask them for that as well. And then can I pick up samples on the last day of the fair? A lot of these guys bring their best products to the Canton Fair, but then they don't want to ship it back home, so they basically just give it out to you on the last day, which will basically save you importing these samples by yourself. So the whole point of this is to show your experience. The more experience you show, the better pricing you're going to get. So for example, if you're sourcing something for the first time, let's say a backpack. Again, a backpack can have polyester material, nylon material, it can have PU coating, PVC coating, it can have Duraflex buckles, it can have YKK zips. But if you just ask a factory, oh, what's the price of this bag? They're like, well, what do you want? PU, PVC, what type of coating, what type of waterproof protection, all that sort of stuff, and you don't know, then they'll walk all over you because they don't know that you know about your products. But if you show your experience and your knowledge, and maybe you ask a few different factories first on Alibaba, what are the common materials that are selling in that market, then you go to the factory that you want to work with and say, okay, this is a list of my requirements. Immediately they have your respect because they know that you know what you're talking about. So, samples. Quite often people ask me about the sampling process, but I've been quite amazed, like some people who do buy from China who don't ask for samples and don't go through this like simple sample process. Now, your first sample you're always going to get is your counter sample. That's basically something that you've bought from a store or something a factory sent you. This is basically what you're building off. You're like, okay, I want to build a product around this actual sample that I've got, and then they make the necessary changes. Sometimes you can have 2 or 3 samples going back and forth. Then when you have the absolute sample that you want to order, this is what's called your pre-production sample, and you almost want to even write on the bag or the product, whatever it is, pre-production sample. Now, this is what you're paying a deposit on to approve them to go into manufacturing. And then once the production is complete, before any form of shipment, you ask them to send you a pre-shipment sample. Now, you should have a pre-production sample and a pre-shipment sample in your hand, and they should be exactly the same. If there's any difference between a pre-production sample and a pre-shipment sample, then you don't ship it. And if there is an issue, you need to deal with it in China before it actually ships, before it actually comes to your warehouse, and you've got a big problem. So just make sure you do that. The other thing is, like, is it common to pay for samples, yes or no? Well, I always just say to my suppliers, look, let's work in partnership here. You cover the cost of the samples, I'll cover the cost of the freight of getting it over here. So I often don't pay for samples. But when you are bringing samples into the US or the UK or wherever you're based, always make sure they write on the invoice that samples are of no commercial value and just write $1. Or just get them to write sample on it or cut a piece out of it, because quite often customs just think you're purchasing something, and let's say it's like a $200 scooter, well, they're going to charge you the duty on whatever the cost of that sample is. Product certificates are also very important. You have to check that does your product, first of all, require any testing or certificates. There are testing houses like Intertek, BV, SGS, Cuma, loads of these companies, but you have to just make sure you're compliant, because I have heard horror stories of people who have put a lot of money into a product, never got it tested, they imported it, they got some returns, it failed, they got asked for testing, they didn't have it, and they could no longer sell their product. So it's a very, very big slip up that I see in the industry. Examples are like CE certificates and FCC and REACH and all this sort of stuff. But you're not expected to know this sort of stuff. You can just approach Intertek and just say to them, look, I'm importing either medical, beauty, healthcare, toys, electronics, whatever it is, and say, what are my legal requirements that I have to have tested on this product to sell it in the USA? They might say, you don't have any legal requirements, you can just bring it in. Or they might say, no, you must pass for the standard. Let's say it's a food product or a hygiene product or an electrical product. You have to know what you're required to do, and then you can just get it priced up and tested before you ship. So quite often people ask me, like, how do I get the best price? These are just some quick tips on negotiation. So I always go by a concept of like imitate and innovate. If you take something that a factory has already done before, then they've already gone through that whole teething process of developing a product. They've already done the paper patterns, they've already cut the materials, their workers know how to make it. So if you just innovate it a little bit by making it, I don't know, changing the color or adding a waterproof coating or adding a feature that was never on the version before, then they can just immediately put it into production, and they can achieve scale, and they can give you the price that they gave their last customer. But if you say, right, I've got this amazing idea for a product, we need to do this here or that, we need to add this thing, then they're like, okay, we need to figure this out. It goes to the development team, and they basically charge you for that development. So if you want good pricing, just take a concept that works already and improve it. Then this is something very, very important as well. Get the full specification sheet of what you want. I always say, like, compare apples with apples. Let's take an example of an outdoor furniture chair, for example. You can have steel tubing or aluminum tubing. It can be polyester material, it can be nylon material, it could be 80 centimeters, it could be 40 centimeters. And quite often people just say, right, what's the price for that, what's the price for that, what's the price for that? But you're not actually comparing what is the exact same product. So what you want to do is figure out what you want to purchase. It has to be polyester, it has to be steel, this is the thickness of the steel it needs to be, and these are the dimensions. Then you give that specification to your 3 different factories, or however many you want to get quotations from, and you'll start to get pricing back, right? $8, $8.10, $8.15. So you know what the market price is. So if you say, right, my target price is 7, then you know you're never going to get that because that's not what the market price is. Now, in China, they almost give you any price that you want. They will give you $7, but they're going to take shortcuts on it. But if you build up your knowledge of what is the market price on a particular product, you know what the fair price is. Now, let's say, for example, the best price you got was $8, but the favorite factory you want to work with is $8.15. Well, you can just say to them, to the factory which is $8.15, look, I want to build this business with you, I want to work with you for the long term, but I've got this quotation for $8, so unless you can match the price, I have to give the business to them. And quite often they will come down and they match the price to get the order, so you do get your best price and your favorite manufacturer. Choose your partner wisely. You're going to be in this for the long term. Once you find a good supplier, you're going to be working together for maybe 10, 15 years, however long you want to be in this business for. So just make sure it's someone that you get along with. Most of my suppliers are all my very, very good friends. I go to China, we hang out together. They've flown over to the UK, we've gone on holidays together. I've attended their weddings. We're just very, very close friends, and that's the way, in my opinion, business should be. Don't force too hard on the price because you will have production issues, as I mentioned before. You can also do something that I call like upsell quantity, and let's say you only want to order 1,000 pieces, but ask for the price for 3,000, 5,000, and then once you see what the price is for 5,000, then just ask them to give you that price because they say, look, we're just starting this business out. I do imagine I will order 5,000 units a year, but I need you to give me that price just so I can get some traction in the market, and I will come back for a bigger order after this one. And sometimes they will bring the price down, but at least you've seen what is the lowest price they'll go to based on the quantity. Also ask them what material they hold in stock. Quite often factories do hold a lot of materials in stock, or customers that they had before have cancelled an order and there's just stock lying there, so they're willing to really give it away at a cheap price. And also visit the factory as well. This is something I've got like another 20 bullet points for, but I don't really have enough time to go over today. But I just want to talk about some other stuff really quick. There's so many other advantages apart from price. A lot of people just focus on price, but there's so many other benefits that you can get from their relationship. They can offer you new products, what they're working on, they'll present it to you. Hey, this is what we're testing out. Do you want to sell it in your market? They take greater care on your orders. If you have a genuine friendship and relationship, they really want to give you their best service. So as a result, you're going to have less returns, better reviews, and more market share for your product. Then they're going to give you better credit terms as well. If you guys are friends and you need to ask them for 60 days credit to finance the order because you want to order more units, then they're more likely to give it to you if they're friends. Faster lead times they'll give you as well. Now imagine the scenario, you've got Amazon buyer A, which only communicates on Alibaba or through a sourcing agent, and then you've got one where you have a genuine relationship and a friendship and you hang out and you're friends, and we're coming up to Chinese New Year and they can only fulfill one order. They're always going to give it to the one that they have a good relationship with and not the one who they've never met before. So just be mindful of that and build up the relationship. And hey, if you don't have the ability or the means to get out to China, get on a WeChat call, or if you're sending them a sample, put a gift in with the sample. Just do little things like that to build up the relationship. They'll also tell you about what your competitors are doing and what they're working on, and also you get nice gifts as well. So I said beginner, intermediate, advanced. Beginner was just using online channels. Intermediate was going to the Canton Fair, but then advanced is really just visiting the factory to get the absolute best results as well. So I'm going to just touch on two topics really quick, like what to do when you visit a factory. These are my two favorite things to do. First of all, make one item yourself. This is in-house testing where I was testing the shoulder straps, and then I was stitching the bag. Every single item I do, I make the bag myself because, for example, before I ever went to a backpack factory, I thought of a backpack just as one unit on a shelf. But then when you see it in a factory, you see it in 30 different pieces. You see the shoulder straps, the foam that goes in the shoulder straps, the webbing, the buckles, the zippers, the pullers, the coating. You see all these different processes, and now all of a sudden you think of a backpack in 30 different pieces rather than one. You start to think of a product in 3D. So when someone tells you, right, I've got a $10 item and I've got a target to make it an $8 item, in your head you can calculate 30 different things you can do to lower the price, but had you never gone to visit that factory, you wouldn't have been able to do that. And that goes for any product as well. You just have to see the process that it goes through. You get new product ideas as well. So this is a pillow that we were doing for Neymar. And then I basically saw that the factory also made eye masks. I didn't even know they did it, but I just saw a box which had eye masks on it. So I told them to put the eye mask over the pillow, take the eyes of the player or the team, and then just turn that into a new product, and that became our next product. Never would have been possible if I wasn't in the factory and didn't see that. Key takeaways, this is going to be my last slide. So am I a beginner, intermediate, or advanced? Just know where you are in your business and where you want to get to. Have I outgrown my supplier on Alibaba? Is it time for me to visit the Canton Fair? Have I got my products tested to legal and industry standards? Have I arranged my pre-shipment inspections? I didn't touch on this, but any large order, you should be definitely getting inspected by a third party before you actually ship it yourself. Then, have I made a plan to visit my factory? How can I improve my product and add the most amount of value to my customer? And what is the import duties on my product available from other countries? This is a hot topic right now because everything that's going on with Trump and the tariffs, but it's just important to be mindful of. Guys, if you want to reach me, that's my name, that's my email address, kian@vultureworld.com. I've got a website where I give out free tips, and SellerCon.com/China is the website if you're interested to come into China with us. My Instagram, I post a lot of stories and all the sort of stuff I do in China, so if you want to keep in touch with me, that's where we can hang out. And thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.